My mother's golden child, my brother Michael, tormented me throughout childhood. When I finally escaped to college and built my perfect life, he destroyed it all, sleeping with my wife, letting me raise his son as my own, and hiding a criminal operation that would eventually leave him paralyzed in prison. 3 months ago, Rachel dropped a bomb that destroyed my entire world. Not only had she been having another long-term affair, but she revealed that Tommy might not be mine. When she finally admitted who she'd been sleeping with, I felt physically sick. It was Michael. The way she told me made it even worse. We were sitting on our couch, the same couch where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies with Tommy between us. She wasn't crying or emotional. She was eerily calm, almost detached, as if she was telling me about her day at work rather than destroying our family. "I need to tell you something," she said, pausing our movie, "and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." I remember nodding, my stomach already knotting with dread. I'd been through her confessions before, but something about her tone this time was different. "I've been seeing someone for a long time," she continued, her voice steady, "and there's more. Tommy, he might not be yours." The world stopped. I remember the sound of our ceiling fan clicking softly overhead, the distant bark of our neighbor's dog, the soft hum of our refrigerator. All these normal, everyday sounds continuing while my life imploded. "Who?" It was all I could manage to say. She looked down at her hands. "Michael." You know that moment in movies where everything goes silent and the camera zooms in on the protagonist's face? That's exactly how it felt. The room seemed to tilt sideways, and I had to grab the armrest to steady myself. According to Rachel, it started during that first Thanksgiving when she stayed with my family. She had just moved to town to be closer to me after graduation, and Mom insisted she stay with them until she found an apartment. Michael, who was usually cold and distant with me, was surprisingly warm and welcoming to her. "He was different when you weren't around," she explained. "Vulnerable. He told me about his struggles, his feelings of inadequacy compared to you. I thought I could help." She spent time with him and Mom, playing video games or watching movies together. She claimed she was trying to help bridge the gap between us, which is why she always invited him to our activities. But there was more to it than that. The truth came out in pieces, each revelation worse than the last. Michael had opened up to her about a recent breakup, playing the vulnerable card. He started flirting with her when I wasn't around, subtle at first, a lingering look here, a casual touch there. She said it made her feel special, desired in a way that my steady, reliable love apparently didn't. One night, while I was working late on a project, they ended up alone in the basement rec room. Michael had been drinking, feeling sorry for himself after another failed job interview. Rachel went to check on him, and I stopped her there. I didn't need the details. She left abruptly before New Year's, claiming she felt guilty. 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Here's the part that truly broke me. She admitted she didn't know if Tommy was mine or Michael's at the time. She chose to stay with me because I was the responsible choice, the one with the good job and stable future. "You were the safe choice," she said, as if that would somehow make it better. "I knew you'd be a good father." They never really ended things either. Those business trips she took, half of them were actually romantic getaways with my brother. The late nights at work, often spent in hotels with him. Even our family gatherings had been opportunities for them to sneak moments together. When I asked why she married me if she wanted Michael, her response chilled me to the bone. "I didn't want to be the one to end things. You were such a good father to Tommy, and I thought I could make it work. I made a mistake and didn't know when to stop." I got up and walked to our bedroom without a word. Started packing a bag while she followed me, crying now, begging me to understand. She tried every manipulation in the book, saying Tommy needed his father, that mistakes happen in every marriage, that she'd do anything to make it right. "If you love me, you'll fight for us," she said, grabbing my arm as I headed for the door. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and wondered how I'd ever thought I knew this woman at all. "That's the problem, Rachel. I did love you. I loved you enough to forgive the unforgivable, twice. But this," I shook my head, "this isn't just about us anymore. This is about years of lies, about my own brother, about I couldn't bring myself to say, "Son, you're cruel," she sobbed as I walked out. "How can you just leave like this?" I didn't answer. The irony of her calling me cruel after what she'd done was too much to process. The next day, I went straight to my parents' house. Mom answered the door with her usual bright smile, but it faded quickly when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" Where are Rachel and Tommy? We need to talk, I said. All of us. Dad came down from his home office, and we sat in the living room where we'd had so many family discussions over the years. The same room where Michael and I had opened Christmas presents as kids, where we'd celebrated birthdays and graduations, where we pretended to be a normal, happy family. I told them everything. About Rachel's affair, about Tommy's possible paternity, about years of betrayal by their precious golden child. Mom tried to deny it at first, of course. There must be some mistake, she said, shaking her head. Michael would never. Call him, I suggested, my voice flat. Right now. Put him on speaker. Dad did, his face grim. Michael answered on the third ring, his voice cheerful. Hey, Dad. What's up? Michael, I said, keeping my voice steady. Rachel told me everything. There was a moment of silence, then, I don't know what you're talking about. Really? You want to play it that way? Should I be more specific about how you've been sleeping with my wife for years? About how Tommy might actually be your son? She's lying, he said quickly. You know how women are, always making up stories. Cut the crap, Michael. She admitted everything. The affair started during Thanksgiving when she stayed with us. You've been meeting in hotels during her business trips. Ring any bells? His voice changed then, became defensive, angry. Well, what did you expect? She was obviously attracted to me. I'm the better-looking brother, always have been. It's not my fault if your wife preferred me. Michael, Dad's voice cracked like a whip across the conversation. Are you telling me this is true? You slept with your brother's wife? Dad, you don't understand, Michael began, his voice taking on that wheedling tone I knew so well. Rachel and I, we have a real connection. It's not just physical. Stop. Dad's voice was deadly quiet now. Do you have any idea what you've done? To your brother? To this family? Oh, come on. Michael's voice turned bitter. He's always been your favorite anyway, hasn't he? Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. Poor Michael, always second best. I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound was harsh, startling in the tense room. Second best? Are you delusional? Mom's been favoring you since the day you were born. You got away with everything. The bullying, the stealing, nearly setting my hair on fire. And now this? You sleep with my wife, father a child with her, and you're playing the victim? You don't deserve her. Michael shouted. You don't deserve any of it. Enough. Dad roared. The room fell silent. Even Mom, who had been quietly crying, stopped to stare at him. Michael, Dad continued, his voice controlled but trembling with rage. As of this moment, you are cut off. No more allowance. No more college tuition. No more trust fund. Nothing. What? Dad, you can't. I can and I will. You want to act like this? Fine. But you'll do it on your own dime. Mom. Michael's voice was desperate now. Tell him he can't do this. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I saw something shift in her eyes. I'm sorry, Michael, she said softly, but your father is right. The silence that followed was deafening. The divorce was ugly, as these things tend to be. Rachel's lawyer tried to fight for alimony since I earned significantly more than her, but her multiple affairs, especially the one with my brother, worked against her. The paternity test confirmed my worst fear. Tommy was Michael's biological son. But things were about to get even more complicated. A week after the paternity test results, Rachel showed up at my office. Her appearance shocked me. She looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and what looked suspiciously like a fading bruise on her cheek. Michael's out of control, she said, her voice shaking. He drinks all the time now, blames me for ruining his life. Last night She touched her cheek unconsciously. I need help. Not for me, but for Tommy. He shouldn't have to see this. I told her to call the police if Michael was being abusive, but she shook her head frantically. I can't. He has videos. Of us. He's been recording everything from the beginning. He says he'll release them if I go to the authorities. And it's not just that. He's been harassing Sarah too. Sarah was my new girlfriend, someone I'd started seeing recently. She was everything Rachel wasn't. Honest, straightforward, kind. And now Michael was trying to poison that too. sending her anonymous messages about how I was damaged goods, and telling her intimate details about my marriage that only he would know. Dad advised me to get a restraining order, but I decided to confront Michael one last time. I found him at the garage where he works, already drunk at 2 p.m. The conversation that followed revealed depths of darkness I hadn't known existed in my brother. He admitted he'd pursued Rachel specifically to hurt me. All those years of resentment, of feeling like Dad preferred me despite Mom's favoritism, had twisted something in him. He said he'd always known Tommy was his. He'd done the math after their first encounter. He let me raise another man's child for years just to prove he could take everything from me. But that wasn't all. As he got drunker, more truth spilled out. He'd been running a scam at the garage, overcharging customers and pocketing the difference. He had dirt on his boss too, something about tax fraud, which was why he hadn't been fired despite showing up drunk most days. I recorded the entire conversation. When I played it for Mom, she finally broke down and revealed something that explained so much about our childhood. She had favored Michael because he reminded her of her younger brother, who died in a car accident when she was 16. She transferred all her unresolved grief and protective instincts onto Michael, allowing him to get away with increasingly horrible behavior because she couldn't bear to lose another brother figure. I thought I was protecting him, she sobbed, but I was just helping him destroy himself and hurt you in the process. Things moved quickly after that. I turned the recording over to the police, along with evidence of the garage scam that Rachel had secretly gathered. They found more than just fraud when they searched his apartment. There were drugs, stolen car parts, and evidence of other crimes. Michael was arrested, but he had one last card to play. He tried to blame everything on Rachel, claiming she was the mastermind behind the garage scam. When that didn't work, he offered to trade information about a local drug ring for a lighter sentence. That's when things got really dangerous. 2 days after Michael made his deal, someone broke into Rachel's apartment. She and Tommy weren't home, thankfully, but the message was clear. Michael had gotten involved with some very bad people. I helped Rachel and Tommy relocate to her parents' house in another state. Not out of any lingering feelings for her, but because Tommy shouldn't have to pay for his parents' mistakes. I set up a trust fund for his education and arranged for him to see a child psychologist to help him process everything that was happening. Dad had a minor heart attack from all the stress, but it served as a wake-up call for our family. During his recovery, he finally opened up about his own role in our family's dysfunction. I saw what was happening, he admitted from his hospital bed. I saw how your mother favored Michael, how he was becoming increasingly unstable. But it was easier to focus on work, to tell myself kids will be kids, to hope things would work themselves out. I failed both of you, Michael by not setting boundaries, and you by not protecting you enough. Mom started therapy to deal with her unresolved grief about her brother and her enabling behavior with Michael. She joined a support group for parents of adult children with addiction issues, which helped her understand that loving someone doesn't mean excusing their behavior. As for me, I'm starting to rebuild my life. Sarah and I are engaged now. She's been incredibly understanding about everything, helping me work through my trust issues without pushing me to move faster than I'm comfortable with. My company promoted me to senior developer, and I'm finally writing that book of short stories I've always dreamed about. Michael was sentenced to 5 years for the fraud, drug possession, and other charges. He writes sometimes from prison, claiming he's changed, that he's attending AA meetings and therapy, that he understands what he did wrong. Maybe he has changed. Maybe he hasn't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Tommy is 8 now. I send him birthday and Christmas cards, and occasionally get updates from Rachel's parents about how he's doing. I'm not ready to be in his life as a father figure. That wound is still too raw, but I'm open to the possibility of some kind of relationship in the future. He started asking questions about his family history, trying to understand who he is and where he comes from. His therapist says this is normal and healthy. Rachel met someone new, a local teacher in her hometown. From what I hear, he's good with Tommy and has a stable, drama-free life. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them go find their happiness elsewhere. Last week, Dad called me to his study. He's changing his will, leaving everything, nearly $2 million, to me, with only $1 to Michael so he can't contest it. The only condition is that Mom can continue living in the house if Dad passes first. You don't have to do this, I told him. Yes, I do, he said firmly. It's time for consequences to mean something in this family. Mom agrees with his decision, which shows how far she's come in her therapy. She's learning that real love sometimes means letting people face the results of their actions. Sarah and I are planning a small wedding for next spring. Just close friends and family. The family we've chosen, not the one we were born into. My best friend from college will be my best man, and Sarah's sister is her maid of honor. Simple, honest, drama-free. Last night, I drove past the garage where Michael used to work. There's a new business there now, a coffee shop. Looking through the window, I saw people laughing, talking, living their normal lives. It struck me then that this is what I've finally achieved: normalcy. Peace. A life unencumbered by toxic family dynamics and endless drama. The quiet brother, the family shadow, has finally found his own light. And you know what? It's warmer here than I ever imagined. Someone asked me recently if I regret any of my decisions in handling this situation. The truth is, I don't. Every step I took, from cutting contact with Michael to maintaining distance from Tommy, was necessary for my own healing. It wasn't always the easy choice, but it was the right one for me. I'm not the same person who started this story. The quiet kid who took his brother's abuse, the husband who forgave betrayal after betrayal. I'm stronger now, but also softer in the ways that matter. I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and that sometimes the best family is the one you build for yourself. Mom gave me a letter last week, one she'd found while cleaning out Michael's old room. It was dated from our high school years, addressed to me but never delivered. In it, teenage Michael wrote about his jealousy, his confusion, his anger. He wrote about feeling like he could never measure up to me in Dad's eyes, about how Mom's favoritism made him feel both powerful and worthless at the same time. Reading it didn't excuse anything he'd done, but it helped me understand how our family's dysfunction had damaged both of us in different ways. I keep that letter in my desk drawer as a reminder of how toxic relationships can destroy everyone involved. But the story doesn't end there. Last month, I discovered something that made everything even more complicated. While helping Dad organize his home office during his recovery, I found old financial records that revealed Michael wasn't just my brother. He was technically my half-brother. Dad had apparently had a brief affair during a rough patch in his marriage, and Michael was the result. Mom had chosen to forgive Dad and raise Michael as her own, perhaps explaining some of her overprotective behavior toward him. This revelation came at the worst possible time. Michael had just been attacked in prison by someone connected to the drug ring he'd informed on. He was in the hospital, and the doctors weren't sure if he would make it. Despite everything he'd done, Mom was beside herself with grief, and Dad was consumed by guilt over his past secrets. Then Rachel dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant again, and claimed this baby was definitely Michael's, conceived just before his arrest. She wanted me to help her get protection from the drug dealers who were now targeting her too. She had evidence on her phone about Michael's deeper involvement in their operation, including names and locations of key players. The police offered to put Rachel and Tommy in witness protection, but she refused to leave without seeing me one last time. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a public cafe. That's when everything went sideways. Two men approached our table, pretending to be regular customers. One of them slipped something into Rachel's coffee when she went to the restroom. I noticed just in time to stop her from drinking it, causing a scene in the cafe. The men fled, but not before I got a photo of their license plate. The police investigation revealed that these men were connected not just to the drug ring, but to a larger criminal organization that Michael had been working for. Apparently, my brother's garage scam was just the tip of the iceberg. He'd been involved in money laundering, stolen car trafficking, and worse. Sarah was understandably freaked out by all this. She suggested we move to another state, start fresh somewhere else. But running away felt like letting Michael win one last time. Instead, I hired private security and worked with the FBI to help bring down the entire operation. During this time, I received a package from Michael's prison cell. Inside was a detailed confession of everything he'd done, along with evidence implicating higher-ups in the criminal organization. He'd arranged for it to be delivered if anything happened to him in prison. At the bottom was a note. I know this doesn't make up for anything, but maybe it can save Rachel and Tommy. And maybe you'll understand why I couldn't stop. I was in too deep from the beginning. The evidence Michael provided led to multiple arrests and the dismantling of a major criminal network. Rachel and Tommy entered witness protection anyway, but now with the organization's leadership behind bars, they had a better chance at a normal life. Michael survived the prison attack, but was left paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors say he'll never walk again. Mom wanted to take him in after his release, but Dad put his foot down. Instead, we arranged for him to go to a rehabilitation facility in another state. Far from us, far from his old connections, far from anyone he could hurt. Last week, I visited Michael in the facility. He's changed, physically and mentally. The once handsome brother who took everything from me now sits in a wheelchair, unable to look me in the eye. He tried to apologize, tried to explain how his resentment and involvement with the criminal organization had spiraled out of control. I never meant for it to go this far, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to hurt you at first, to make you feel as worthless as I did. But then one bad decision led to another, and suddenly I was trapped. They threatened to kill me if I didn't cooperate, and by then, I dragged Rachel into it too. I listened, but didn't offer forgiveness. Some things can't be forgiven, only accepted and left in the past. Dad finally confessed to Mom about Michael's true parentage. Instead of tearing them apart, it brought them closer. They're in couples therapy now, working through decades of secrets and lies. Mom's starting to understand how her overcompensation with Michael contributed to his sense of entitlement and my feelings of abandonment. Sarah and I ended up postponing our wedding. With everything that happened, it didn't feel right to celebrate just yet. Instead, we bought a house in a gated community and installed a state-of-the-art security system. Some might call it paranoid, but after everything that's happened, I'm not taking any chances. I received one final letter from Rachel before she disappeared into witness protection. She explained how Michael had initially blackmailed her into continuing their affair by threatening to expose her involvement in the garage scam. She'd helped him cook the books, thinking it was just a small-time operation. By the time she realized how deep he was in with the criminal organization, it was too late to get out. The trust fund I set up for Tommy is now managed by a blind trust, ensuring he'll be taken care of without compromising his and Rachel's new identities. Sometimes I wonder what they told him about all this, how they explained why he had to leave his school and friends behind. I hope someday he'll understand that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us. Dad's health is better now, but the stress of everything has aged him considerably. He's retired from his law practice and spends his time writing a memoir about our family's story. He says it's therapeutic, helping him process his role in creating the dysfunction that led to all this. As for me, I'm learning to live with the knowledge that the brother I grew up with wasn't just a bully or a cheater, but someone capable of far worse. The criminal organization he worked for is still under investigation, and occasionally FBI agents show up at my door with more questions about Michael's activities during those years. Sarah and I are expecting our first child, a girl. We've agreed to be completely honest with her about her family history when she's old enough to understand. No more family secrets, no more enabling behavior, no more pretending everything is fine when it isn't. The garage where everything started has been demolished now. They're building a community center in its place. Sometimes I drive past the construction site and think about how appropriate that is. Something positive rising from the ashes of destruction. I still keep Michael's teenage letter in my desk drawer, along with the confession he sent from prison. They serve as reminders that family isn't just about blood. It's about choices, about the people we decide to be, about the legacy we choose to leave behind. The quiet brother, the family shadow, has finally stepped into the light. And in that light, I can see clearly now. See how patterns of dysfunction and enablement can destroy generations, how secrets and lies can poison even the strongest bonds, and how sometimes the only way forward is to leave the past behind completely. But most importantly, I've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting or forgiving. It means choosing yourself, choosing truth, choosing a better path forward. Even if that path leads you away from the people who were supposed to love you most. #brother made my life hell growing up, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him, and left me their $2 million inheritance. I've been sitting on this story for months, trying to figure out how to even begin describing the mess my life has become. I guess I'll start from the beginning. My younger brother Michael was always our mother's golden child. You might think my issues with him stemmed from jealousy, but you'd be wrong. He was the favored one, not me. There was never any reason for him to resent me, yet he made it his life's mission to make my existence as miserable as possible. Growing up, our mother indulged Michael in everything. She cooked his special meals, making sure to include all his favorites, did his laundry while I learned to do mine at age 12, and even forced me to help him with his schoolwork. Family helps family, she'd say whenever I protested. Funny how that rule only seemed to apply to me helping him, never the other way around. I was what you'd call your stereotypical nerd, quiet, introverted, always with my nose in a book. Michael was the opposite, loud, athletic, and rough, just like our dad. I think that's part of why Mom favored him. He reminded her of the man she fell in love with. I, on the other hand, was too cold and logical for her taste. My habit of being straightforward and honest about things often rubbed her the wrong way. The bullying started when I was around 12. At first, it was relatively minor things. Michael reading my private diary and mocking the contents to his friends, accidentally breaking my possessions, or putting things in my food. One time, he put small stones in my cereal bowl. When I told Mom about it, she laughed it off, saying that's just how brothers bond. I'm pretty sure attempting to break someone's teeth isn't normal bonding behavior, but what did I know? Things got progressively worse in high school. Michael knew I was being bullied by some kids at school, and instead of standing up for his brother, he joined in. He'd call me names like ugly loser and hairy monkey, encouraging others to physically harass me. During one particularly nasty fight, he told me to kill myself. I was already struggling with depression at the time, and hearing those words from my own brother, well, it left scars that haven't fully healed even now. The turning point came during my sophomore year when Michael tried to set my hair on fire. Yes, you read that correctly. I was sitting at my desk, working on homework, when I felt heat near my head. Mom tried to defend him, saying he was just playing around, but Dad finally stepped in. For the first time, he threatened to call the police, and I saw real fear in Michael's eyes. That night, something changed. Dad came to my room and really listened to me for the first time. The next day, he enrolled me in MMA classes at the local gym. Mom protested, claiming it would encourage violence, but Dad stood firm. Those classes changed everything for me. Not just physically, though transforming from a scrawny nerd into someone who could defend himself was incredible. The real change was mental. I found my voice, my confidence, my sense of self-worth. The first time I stood up to Michael was when he tried to steal my saved allowance money. Instead of running to tell our parents like I usually would, I punched him in the face. The look of absolute shock as he fell backward was something I'll never forget. Mom came running at his cries, ready to defend her precious boy as always, but Dad shut it down immediately. He's lucky all he got was a punch, Dad said. Steal from anyone else, they'd call the cops. After that incident, Michael couldn't physically bully me anymore, but he switched to psychological warfare. He'd completely ignore my existence, spread rumors about me at school, and talk about me to others while pretending I wasn't there. When he needed to communicate something, he'd do it through Mom. I tried multiple times to arrange a sit-down conversation to resolve our issues, but Mom always refused to get involved. Funny how she was always involved when Michael needed defending, but never when there was actual conflict resolution to be done. College was my salvation. I won a full scholarship to a university 300 miles away from home. The day I left felt like being released from prison. For the first time in my life, I could breathe freely. I made real friends, joined clubs that interested me, and started building a life that had nothing to do with being Michael's brother. That's where I met Rachel. She was beautiful, intelligent, and seemed to understand me in a way no one else ever had. We met at a frat party. I only went because my roommate literally dragged me there, and we clicked instantly. When she got pregnant during our senior year, marriage seemed like the natural next step. We were young, but we were in love. Or at least, I was. The first few years were good. We had our son, Tommy, and I thought I had everything I'd ever wanted. a successful career in software development, a beautiful wife, and a healthy child. Sure, there were red flags I chose to ignore. Rachel had 2 affairs that I knew about, one with her married coworker that lasted several years, and another with an ex-boyfriend during a family visit. Each time, I forgave her. I didn't want Tommy growing up in a broken home, and I genuinely believed people could change if you gave them the chance. What a fool I was. 3 months ago, Rachel dropped a bomb that destroyed my entire world. Not only had she been having another long-term affair, but she revealed that Tommy might not be mine. When she finally admitted who she'd been sleeping with, I felt physically sick. It was Michael. According to Rachel, it started during that first Thanksgiving when she stayed with my family. Michael, who was usually cold and distant with me, was surprisingly warm and welcoming to her. She spent time with him and Mom, playing video games or watching movies together. She claimed she was trying to help bridge the gap between us, which is why she always invited him to our activities. The truth was much darker. Michael had apparently opened up to her about a recent breakup, playing the vulnerable card. He started flirting with her when I wasn't around, and one thing led to another. Rachel left abruptly before New Year's, claiming she felt guilty, but 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Here's the worst part. She admitted she didn't know if Tommy was mine or Michael's at the time. She chose to stay with me because I was the responsible choice, the one with the good job and stable future. They never really ended things either. Those business trips she took, half of them were actually romantic getaways with my brother. When I asked why she married me if she wanted Michael, her response chilled me to the bone. I didn't want to be the one to end things. You were such a good father to Tommy, and I thought I could make it work. I made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I packed my bags that night. Rachel cried, begged, tried to manipulate me by saying Tommy needed his father. I reminded her that I might not even be his father, which made her cry harder and accuse me of being cruel. The irony of her calling me cruel after what she'd done was almost laughable. The next day, I went to my parents' house and revealed everything. Mom, true to form, tried to defend Michael at first. There must be some mistake. He would never. I cut her off by calling Michael on speakerphone right there in front of them. The conversation that followed was illuminating. Michael first denied everything. Then when I told him Rachel had confessed, he switched to blaming her, called her characterless, and said it wasn't his fault if women found him attractive. I'm the better-looking brother, he actually said. What did you expect? Dad's reaction was nuclear. He cut Michael off completely. No more college funds, no more allowance, nothing. He told Michael that he had not only betrayed his brother, but had destroyed our entire family. Mom tried to defend Michael initially, but even she couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. The divorce was ugly, as these things tend to be. Rachel's lawyer tried to fight for alimony since I earned significantly more than her, but her multiple affairs, especially the one with my brother, worked against her. The paternity test confirmed my worst fear. Tommy was Michael's biological son. Rachel begged me to stay in Tommy's life, saying he saw me as his father, but I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at him, all I could see was Michael and Rachel's betrayal. But the story doesn't end there. Last week, Rachel showed up at my office, crying about how Michael has become abusive. Apparently, living together has been a nightmare. He drinks heavily, blames her for ruining his life, and has been taking his frustration out on Tommy. She begged me to help, saying she made a horrible mistake and would do anything to protect Tommy from Michael. I told her to call the police if Michael was being abusive, but I couldn't get involved. That's when she revealed something even more disturbing. Michael had been recording their encounters from the beginning and was threatening to release intimate videos if she went to the authorities. He's also been harassing my new girlfriend, Sarah, sending her anonymous messages about how I'm damaged goods and telling her details about my marriage that only he would know. Dad advised me to get a restraining order, but I decided to confront Michael one last time. I found him at the garage where he works, already drunk at 2 p.m. What he told me made everything suddenly make horrible sense. He admitted he'd pursued Rachel specifically to hurt me. All those years of resentment, of feeling like Dad preferred me despite Mom's favoritism, had twisted something in him. He said he'd always known Tommy was his. He'd done the math after their first encounter. He let me raise another man's child for years, just to prove he could take everything from me. I recorded the entire conversation. When I played it for Mom, she finally saw Michael for who he really was. She broke down and revealed something that explained so much about our childhood. She had favored Michael because he reminded her of her younger brother, who died when she was a teenager. She transferred all her unresolved grief and protective instincts onto Michael, allowing him to get away with increasingly horrible behavior because she couldn't bear to lose another brother figure. The police arrested Michael yesterday. Turns out Rachel wasn't his only victim. He'd been running a scam at the garage, overcharging customers and pocketing the difference. When they searched his apartment, they found not only evidence of the fraud, but also illegal substances. Rachel and Tommy are staying with her parents while she figures out her next steps. I'm not ready to have Tommy in my life, but I did set up a trust fund for his education. He shouldn't suffer for his parents' mistakes. Rachel sent me a long letter apologizing and explaining how Michael had manipulated and blackmailed her into continuing the affair even after she wanted to end it. While I understand she was also a victim of Michael's manipulation, I can't forget that she chose to deceive me for years. Dad had a minor heart attack last week. He's recovering well, but it made him reevaluate things. He told me he regrets not stepping in sooner when we were kids, not seeing how Mom's favoritism and enabling behavior were destroying both his sons, Michael through entitlement and me through neglect. As for me, I'm starting to heal. Sarah and I are talking about moving in together. She understands my trust issues and doesn't push me to move faster than I'm comfortable with. My company promoted me to senior developer, and I'm finally writing that book of short stories I've always dreamed about. Michael writes to me from jail sometimes. He claims he's attending AA meetings and seeing a therapist, that he's really changing this time, that he understands what he did wrong. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Tommy turned 7 last week. I sent him a birthday card, the first contact I've had with him since everything happened. I'm not ready to be in his life as a father figure, but maybe someday I can be something like a distant uncle. Who knows? The hardest lesson I've learned through all this is that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who were supposed to love us the most. But I've also learned that it's possible to build a new family, not through blood, but through choice and trust and genuine care. Someone asked me recently if I regret any of my decisions in handling this situation. The truth is, I don't. Every step I took, from cutting contact with Michael to maintaining distance from Tommy, was necessary for my own healing. It wasn't always the easy choice, but it was the right one for me. I'm not the same person who started this story. The quiet kid who took his brother's abuse, the husband who forgave betrayal after betrayal. I'm stronger now, but also softer in the ways that matter. I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and that sometimes the best family is the one you build for yourself. Dad called me to his study last night. He's changing his will, leaving everything, nearly $2 million, to me, with only $1 to Michael so he can't contest it. The only condition is that Mom can continue living in the house if Dad passes first. Part of me feels guilty about this, but a larger part recognizes it as justice finally being served. Last week, I drove past the garage where Michael used to work. There's a for lease sign in the window now. The sight didn't bring me any joy or satisfaction, just a quiet acceptance that some chapters of our lives need to stay closed. Sarah and I got engaged yesterday. It's different this time. Healthier, more honest. We're planning a small wedding, just close friends and family. Yes, family, the one I've chosen, not the one I was born into. The quiet brother, the family shadow, has finally found his own light. And you know what? It's warmer here than I ever imagined. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of drama, redemption, and life's unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you found this story engaging, and leave a comment. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. More coming soon.